Welcome to the complete comic book history of the Dark Knight. I am Salazar Knight, and this is year 10 in the Silver Age of Batman. In the previous episode of the Silver Bat, we ended the first 9 years of the Batman Silver Age. That time period was filled with ridiculous stories and the art style was getting very old. The sales of the Batman comics were dropping, and for this reason in 1964, DC decided to change the Batman books in order to keep the character interesting and relevant among other comic book giants. After a series of terrible comics, things reached rock bottom with Batman 162. Because of how poorly these comics were selling, DC considered cancelling the Batman and Detective Comics series altogether. But after that comic, DC decided instead to give Batman one last chance. The first change was the removal of longtime Silver Age editor Jack Schiff from the Batman books, who was then replaced by the legendary Julius Schwartz. And just in case you're not aware, Mr. Schwartz was responsible for bringing back the Golden Age heroes Flash and Green Lantern, but with a modern design that is still used today, and he was also responsible for the creation of the Justice League of America. Knowing what Mr. Schwartz was capable of, DC was sure that the Batman could still be saved, and this was just the beginning of the many changes made to the Batman in order to modernize and keep him relevant. The new editor, Julius Schwartz, first hired his longtime collaborators writer John Broome and artist Carmine Infantino to help him change Batman for good. Broome and Infantino were already notable for helping create Barry Allen and Hal Jordan as the new versions of the Flash and Green Lantern for the new generations, and following Schwartz's guidance, the three of them worked together to make Batman great once again. Batman's new look debuted for the first time in Detective Comics 327, and this issue marked the first appearance of Batman with a yellow oval on his chest, resembling the bat signal. This issue was the first official comic produced with a new look and credited to someone else who was not Bob Kane for the first time in the history of Batman. But because of publication schedules, the first comic released featuring the new look was World's Finest 141. That said, it almost feels as if the artist of that comic was told to add the yellow oval after the whole art was finished. Now, when we take a look at Detective Comics 327, we can actually see just from looking at the cover art and the splash page that Batman was changed. When we compare the previous art, we can absolutely notice that Carmine Infantino's art is very nice and absolutely better. The layout of his pages and panels are outstanding. This was the major improvement that the Batman needed. Just look at these pages. But that's not the end of it. The Batman stories were also improved, and John Broome made an incredible work with Batman, making him and Robin the best detectives in Gotham City. The silly characters like Batmite, Bathound, Batwoman and Batgirl were gone, and the alien and fantasy stories were completely removed. It was a new era, and Batman was in the spotlight once again. But enough of the behind-the-scenes stuff, let's move forward with the actual history of the Silver Bat, year 10. On their first new adventure, Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson investigate Gotham Village, a historical place in Gotham that had been taken over by criminals. Seeking to save the village from an eventual collapse, Batman and Robin find an underground system of caves that are being used by the criminals as their hideout. The heroes sneak inside, but they are quickly outnumbered by the criminals. Batman and Robin are apparently defeated, but when the criminals less suspect it, the heroes attack them and manage to defeat them before the police arrives and arrests them. Gotham Village is saved, and all thanks to Batman and Robin. This was the first Batman story featuring the new look and the new team, and it was an instant hit. The story and the art were great, but there was one little thing in this story that caught the attention of all the Batman fans. In one of the last panels, Batman confronted the criminals holding a gun. After 25 years of not using weapons, Batman used a gun again, but of course he didn't shoot anybody. However, this little mistake got the new team a lot of trouble with the fans, but the truth is that this was completely unintentional. Julius Schwartz points this out in his autobiography. Before I took over Batman, I really hadn't been following the continuity. I asked John Broome to write the first assignment, and he more or less seemed to share the same lack of excitement for Bob Kane's creation. There we were, two professionals not realizing that, when it came to Batman, we were the blind leading the blind. So, as you can see, the new creative team was not up to date with the current events of Batman, and that was probably for the better. All they knew was that Batman was the world's greatest detective, and so they brought back that aspect into the Batman stories. However, the changes were not over yet, and the next story marks a turning point in the Batman's history. While the dynamic duo are busy away from home, Alfred, their trusted butler, learns that some wanted criminals have escaped prison, and he decides to help capturing them. But of course, he fails. When they return home, Batman and Robin track down the criminals, hoping to save Alfred, not knowing that Alfred has somehow managed to escape. For this reason, Batman and Robin are lured into a deadly trap, and they would have died if it wouldn't have been for Alfred, who saves them by pushing them out of the danger zone, but he dies instead as a big boulder crushes his body. Alfred, the trusted butler and faithful friend, is gone, and Bruce decides to honor his memory by starting the Alfred Foundation. However, in that same moment, someone arrives to Wayne Manor, and when Dick Grayson opens the door, he is greeted by his aunt, Harriet Cooper, who has decided to move with Bruce and Dick in order to help them now that Alfred is dead. And all of this happened in one single comic. It was all part of the changes made by Julius Schwartz. He was aware of the accusations made by Frederick Werthmann about Batman and Robin and their estranged relationship that were still haunting the characters, and so he decided to introduce Aunt Harriet into the stories. But in order to do so, he had to kill Alfred, or at least he thought that was a good idea back then. And there's another detail that you might have noticed. The art style of this story is not as impressive as in the previous one. Why? Well, as much as Schwartz would have liked to have Infantino doing all the art all the time, the agreement between DC and Bob Kane allowed Kane to keep illustrating at least half of the Batman comics, so Kane was allowed to illustrate every other comic in between those drawn by Infantino. And in order to keep things separated, the writer for the stories drawn by Kane was Bill Finger. In fact, the death of Alfred was a story plotted by Finger and Schwartz together, as it was only reasonable that the man who created Alfred would be the man to kill him. With Alfred gone, Bruce starts acting strange, working always by himself around the Batcave. A few days later, Bruce reveals a secret elevator entrance that connects Wayne Manor with the Batcave, and when he and Dick descend to the cave, Bruce also reveals the new and improved Batmobile that he has been working on. The new model is a convertible sport car, which looks much better than the old version. And again, the changes continue, and this time, Schwartz needed to modernize the Batman equipment and base of operations. As a science fiction fan himself, Schwartz didn't like the idea of going to the Batcave using stairs, and so he came up with the secret elevator entrance. Another change that was soon implemented was the Hotline, a private phone line between Commissioner Gordon and Batman. This method was introduced as a replacement for the Bat Signal because Julius Schwartz felt that it was not entirely appropriate for the new stories. The hotline first appeared when Commissioner Gordon calls Batman and sends him on a mission with Robin to England, where they capture a wanted criminal inside an ancient castle filled with death traps. When the heroes return to Gotham, they investigate a mysterious case of people attacking other people without reason. As they investigate, Batman is suddenly attacked by all the people on the streets, and even Robin turns against him. Later, Batman and Robin realize that it's all part of a plan from foreign spies who are wanted by the FBI. Then, Batman teams up with Superman to confront the most bizarre villain of all time, the Composite Superman. He is a man with amazing powers who adopts the appearance of Batman on his left side and Superman on his right side. The Composite Superman is seemingly invincible, but his powers are just temporary, and when they run out, he returns to normal and doesn't remember anything. Later, Batman and Superman end up fighting in a gladiator-style battle, but their friendship remains intact, even though Batman wins. Shortly after this, Batman meets a young woman who had recently graduated from the police academy. Her name is Patricia Powell, and she tells Batman that despite her perfect scores, she has just one trouble. She has a crush on Bruce Wayne. Later on, Batman and Patricia solve a crime together, and afterwards, she receives an invitation to a party that would take place in Wayne Manor. Unfortunately, the party is disrupted by some criminals who get away with valuable objects from the party guests. Batman and Patricia work together once more to capture the criminals, but after the case is solved, Bruce never tries to contact Patricia again, not even as Batman. And again, this was part of the many changes to the Batman mythos. This woman was introduced as a possible romantic interest for Batman, but she was apparently poorly received and the writers decided never to use her again, which is a bummer. Later, a new criminal who can use other people's identities appears in Gotham, and Bruce Wayne is one of the victims of the stolen identity case. Batman and Robin investigate the mystery, and they team up with the Elongated Man, who happens to be in Gotham City. Now, the Elongated Man was a character that had backup stories in the Flash comics, which were also edited by Schwartz. When he started editing Batman, he moved those stories to Detective Comics, replacing the stories of the Martian Manhunter, and that's why this team-up was made possible. After that case is solved, the heroes are attacked by a weird costume criminal called the Grasshopper, who somehow manages to steal the Batmobile and the Batboat. Later, the heroes learn that the Grasshopper are in fact two people and that they are working for this mysterious criminal called the Outsider. This mysterious criminal strikes again, but this time he uses a witch to haunt Batman. The heroes manage to stop the supposed witch, but the Outsider once again tells them that he will soon confront them and that he would eliminate them once and for all. Much later, in other stories, it was revealed that the witch from this story was in fact Satana, who was under some strange mind control. And this is simply because Schwartz co-created Satana, and she was a character he liked to use in all the comics he edited from time to time. And with that, we end this episode of the Silver Bat. The mystery of the Outsider continues in the next year, and the many changes of the new Silver Age in Batman keep coming non-stop. So, if you don't want to miss those stories, subscribe to the best Batman channel. That is, this channel. Right?